This is King Bo Christ, and you're now tuned in to the I Say That to Say This show. Beautiful people, welcome to episode 15 of the I Say That to Say This podcast. I'm joined by a very, very special guest. You may know him from, I believe, episode 8 of the Sports with a Capital F podcast, collab podcast I did. My man Graham, what's happening, brother?
Not much, sir. This has been a long time in the making. I'm just excited that we're finally about to do this.
Oh, right, yeah. We've actually, for the listeners, we've been planning this for probably just about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm almost glad that it didn't happen when we were originally supposed to, because there would have been so much would have missed out. Like, the world is seeing things it hasn't seen, if ever, you know what I mean, or in a very long time. Yeah. It's like the 60s all over again, but in 2017. So with those dynamics, you can't make that shit up. So it's unfortunate it happened.
Absolutely, but it's moved very quickly since we kind of planned this. I initially planned on coming to the table with a great deal of rants about how everyone was making a big deal about nothing politically, about like the way sort of like the right was gaining traction, and the way they were like, look, we're doing what everyone else has done and we're being persecuted for it. That was actually kind of gaining traction a month ago.
Right.
Definitely not the case now.
No. Yeah. So we could address this week's topic and work backwards. I every day in the news there's been something else. Like since the election. Every single day, I don't want to call it a scandal, but it flirts with it. There's been something new.
Yeah, but even going back to when the election cycle began, starting when Donald Trump descended that golden escalator with those paid people there to watch him announce his presidency, it's been one thing after another.
Non-stop. So I was talking to Graham, and I believe when we were doing our Sammy Sosa episode, which I just realized that I don't think I ever got that episode, because I have to throw that up. Even though it's old, I still have to put it up because I really like the content that was on there. So in that episode, we started going off into one of our rants because obviously Graham, being a friend of the show, he likes to drag on rants that he has to connect two dots and end up with an I say that to say this moment. So we went off into some wild tangent, and we were talking about the death of the gray area. And you're calling in from Georgia, correct?
Yeah, I make my home in Georgia.
And
born and raised in Chicago.
Born and raised in Chicago, for those of you who don't know, just to bring you up to speed. And I'm here in New York. So it's not just in one place. It's not just in the big cities. It's everywhere. Like it's just sweeping the nation. So now these latest events with Trump, or I don't want to call him Trump, and I don't want to call them white nationalists. We're gonna call them what they are and call them Nazis.
Agreed.
I think
that's the best way to start.
I think that the world wants to kill the gray area until it's convenient. You know what I mean? The world, everything is always black and white, and then with this issue, I hear guys saying they're fucking racist, and they're like, whoa, we don't know that, and I'm like, hold on, man.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's sort of what I meant at the beginning of the show, what I was saying about like how the right was starting to gain traction, and they're as someone who strives for objectivity. Like, I have a rant on that for later, but like as someone who like really like guts it out like a monk to try to be objective. There was early on in the Trump administration, well, and even still now, there's accusations hurled at people like, oh, that person's a Nazi. that person's like a radical right winger, and it in
Steve
some
Bannon?
respects felt like crying wolf, because here we are, these were real, actual Nazis, and now we're left, when there was a huge gray area before, now we're confronted with actual Nazis, and now all of a sudden there's two sides to that argument when there wouldn't have been previously.
And you know what gets me with that? I mean, it's the obvious thing that everyone's talking about, but I just feel the need to touch on it. You can't do this shit in Germany. So I really don't understand. Right. So I really don't understand. And remind me, we have to talk about the monuments also. So we're gonna be here for a while.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm settled in, my goodness.
But you can't do this shit in Germany. So I just really don't understand the connection in people. That's why I don't like that term white nationalist, because the Nazis lost. And we had the similar talk with the Confederate Army. They lost.
Yeah. These are losing causes that are so anti-American. They go back to like the birth of the American zeitgeist that we still sort of live in, like the post-isolationist World War II era, America feeling. That really, in a lot of ways, it's been like an incredibly slow process that is massively flawed, but in a lot of ways, that sort of like economic boom dovetailed with the American dream that all people are created equal and have equal opportunity. That's sort of when that became a reality for a lot of people that it wasn't before. And it's been an incredibly slow climb to that point. But now we're at 2017, and there are people identifying with two former governments that were categorically as un-American as you can possibly imagine. Like a group of traitors who seceded from the nation, and the greatest evil the world has ever faced. Like one of the few times there's any sort of like national unity in our country among European nations, like the end of the War of States period for the West. It's very confusing to me that people would confuse Nazis and Confederates with patriots.
Also, for the listeners, I just want to point out that Graham is a history major, so he's qualified to speak on these events. It's not like he
concerned you would say that, because I feel like it's on pressure now.
I'm just saying, like, I have to put that out there. Just let people know you qualify, because we're at that point in the world where people will really have an hour and a half discussion and nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about. So he was chosen specifically for this podcast. But to your point, I actually was thinking about it today when, I was looking at the time and just trying to gauge my schedule, because I knew we were going to be here doing this because we agreed on the time. And I wanted to bring it to backtrack a little. I know we were just talking about 2017, where we are, but what were they called? Were they called yeomen? The farmers for in the South in like the 1800s? Were they the yeomen?
Are you talking about like indentured servitude, or where are the sharecroppers?
Right, yeah, the sharecroppers, but I feel like they had a name, like the yeoman farmers or whatever they were called.
That's possible. I mean, it's possible that they did have a name like that. I would know them as sharecroppers.
Sure, we'll just use sharecroppers for conversation purposes. But the sharecropper, what is the stat? Like, I don't know, somewhere between, it's hard to gauge it, but somewhere between like 5 and less than 10% of white Americans own slaves, right?
Yeah, I've heard it figured as low as 3, but but 5 to 10.
Right, I've heard it from like 3 to like roughly 10. So
and sometimes it depends on like the quantity, or like if someone was in some way earning it. But 5 to 10.
Right, so a slave in that time would have went for about $500. Well, just going off the top of my head, if I'm gonna account for like inflation, and if it was today's times, that would go for like probably like over $45,000. No, between like, we'll just say even a ballpark figure between 40 and 50 grand. A slave would have cost today, like a healthy male, African male. So during that time, obviously not everybody's going to be able to afford that. People couldn't fucking buy slaves now if they were available. So, and there were people taking out, slave masters taking out mortgages on slaves. And the average was probably about, I mean, the biggest plantations had like 400 slaves. I believe George Washington had like over 350 slaves. And the average would probably be about 40 slaves per plantation, right? So during this time,
and in no way do you want to represent the
right, sure, exactly.
That those small percentages of people had on the machinations of like what an entire section of the country.
Right, exactly. So during that time, as I said, the price of slaves was extremely expensive. Very few people in the South owned them. Very few slave owners owned them. So during this time, you also had to convince your neighbors and the farmers. And quick sidebar, I know I'm like going into a whole fucking history lesson here, but I wanted to make it all make sense. Slave owners would rent out their slaves also for profit. So they'd rent them to other farmers and sharecroppers. Rent out their services for the day, they get paid. The slave, obviously the fucking slave didn't get paid. You know what I mean? The slave owners got paid. And it was almost like a subcontractor thing, for lack of a better term, and just move on. So you also had to convince people, your neighbors, not to, that you didn't have to pay them and not to provide more jobs, but you had the free slave labor. So what I was getting at was you have these sharecroppers, which these wealthy slave owners mind fuck them into believing, like, listen, no matter what, you will always be better than these slaves. So no matter what happens, you won't be as bad as them. Like, you see them, they don't even fucking count as people. They're animals.
Right.
But you...
While they themselves are being exploited by the...
Right, that's my entire point. So, I think I was just connecting the dots on it because I was really trying to figure out this fucking movement that's sweeping the nation. And I'm like, you know what? It's that same... I don't know what to call it. I don't want to say cult belonging, because it's deeper than that. It's worse than that. But it's
sort of people being willfully misled.
There you go. Right. Sure. So I think those same tactics are being applied today. For example, the guy, I forget his name. I should probably have looked it up, but I don't even give a fuck to say his name. But one of the main gentlemen with the tiki torches, I didn't even mean to call him a gentleman because that he's not. But one of the main Nazis with a tiki torch, he worked at a fucking hot dog stand, Top Dog, hot dog. And I'm like,
listen, there is so much. There is so much about this. This feeds into exactly what we came here to talk about. There's so much about the contradiction between what people allege to believe and their actual reality as a result of them living in weird little echo chambers, to the point where a guy who works at a taco stand is a Nazi, and in much less funnier but no less cosmically comical terms, a white supremacist drove his car into a crowd of people in the same way that an Islamic terrorist would drive a car into a group of people.
Sure.
And we have a Democrat committing a mass shooting against Republican senators. I mean, the shit, none of it, if you examine any of what goes on now on the extremes of the spectrum, it stands up to so little scrutiny. And to qualify that, I don't look at counter protesters in the like in Charlottesville as being the extreme left. That's like the extreme
the alt left, as Trump referred to them as.
yeah, or Antifa or whatever you want to call them. I mean, they're in those instances. I'm not interested in labeling those people.
Sure, I'm totally on board with you for that.
Right. and not to launch into anything either, but like this is I don't in any way want to discourage young listeners from being angry at Nazis or feeling that like burn in the pit of their stomach that what they're seeing is so anti-American. But I do also kind of remember a pre-social media world where Nazis were goofies. Like,
oh, forget about it.
Nazis, they would show up places and like kids would show up and throw rocks at them, and then they would go home. You know, and my only concern is that going out in the street and fighting these insane marginal people all of a sudden pushes them out of the margins into the mainstream and in some ways legitimizes them in the eyes of, you know, the discourse of our country. Because here we are talking about them like they're some kind of force when they've always existed in the fringes.
Sure.
And they would show up when someone would tear down a Confederate statue. And I do, like I said, I can appreciate that level of anger. This is
of
just
course.
purely speculative observation.
Of course.
But is it not possible that if you just let those wackos stand out there and get mad while they tore down that statue, like the statue would have still came down, and then you wouldn't have like, because this works in their favor. It's like terrorism in that way. They are terrorists. It's the same thing. Like radical terrorists love nothing more than when America declared war on them. You know, nothing legitimized their existence as much.
Of course, because now they can invite them to whatever, you know, secret location, and they can say, "You see that? You see what they're doing to us?" And then it proves their point, and which only makes them bigger and builds momentum, because there's always going to be a bunch of lost motherfuckers looking for guidance, and in the wrong hands, this is what happens.
Yep.
So,
and it's a somewhat effective recruiting tool to see, like, see those crazy liberals, you know, like, you know, see them out there fighting to keep that statue from going up. This is about pride, like, but it's not. It's backwards.
of course.
It's misguided in like the worst possible way. And but that's my concern, is that it may punching Nazis, #punch a Nazi might be less effective than #laughing.
No, break their fucking arm so we know. You know what I mean? Don't just punch them.
Yeah.
But
something.
also,
ridicule them. You know, like a Nazi deserves ridicule, and this fringe group is there. I just don't think they have the. I think they have as much power as we give them in some respect. You know what I mean?
Of course. But you were also in the military.
That is correct.
My question to you, see, my dad was in the military in the late 70s, early 80s. So obviously times were different. Mm-hmm. But you being in the military, did you feel like these guys they don't come from a military background, correct? Because I feel like if you're in the military, you get it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say, and I'll try to be brief so you can finish your question, is that, like, being in the military is a cross-section of society in a lot of ways. I mean, there's all different kinds of really great people and huge quantities of all kinds of assholes. So it's not entirely unlikely that they came from military background, but it would be hard to serve in the military successfully harboring any kind of bullshit like that, because you have, you know, especially if you're in like, I was an aircraft mechanic, and even in what I did, I had to trust the people around me, regardless of what they looked like. You know?
Sure, of course. But my question was, I feel like these guys that are out here and you know, crying in the streets saying, "You will not replace us. You will not replace us." My question is, like, where do you feel like you're being replaced? And I get it. I know, you know, the Trump, he moved on the immigrants. But now I almost feel like they're just not crying wolf, but I could see, I don't know. I'm an opportunist in the same way I tell, like I talk to black people, and, you know, same when I have friends that are like, "Yo, you know what I'm saying, it's hard out here." And I'm like, "Bro, listen, nobody cares. Do you?" I do it more so on the other side with, like, if a fucking 28-year-old white guy told me that immigrants were stealing his jobs, I'd really look at him and say, "What do you, like, I'd wonder what you did."
No, Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought this up too, because I don't know what it is. I have no scientific evidence for it, but I know that whatever that is somehow related to our evolution as people, and I don't know what makes everyone feel so good about being victimized somehow, or like I'm not in this position as a result of this entire group of people, right? Whereas like there are groups of people in this country, there are genuinely minorities that have risen up through hundreds of years of systemic racism, and that goes all the way down to like where they were and weren't allowed to live, and like just this kind of like never-ending uphill battle, right? Which is accurate, and I don't want to sound like those people who anybody can do anything, but anybody can do anything.
I'm 100% on board with you. I agree.
Like you said, definitely like an able-bodied 28-year-old white dude, while the chips aren't like so stacked in his favor that he feels like all he has to do is fall out of bed in the morning and make $60,000 a year, because the data doesn't bear that out.
Right, yeah, and I'm not even, that's what I'm saying. I'm being realistic. We're going to...
But it's not, but that's the deal too, though, is that I don't know what it is that feels so good for those people to like scapegoat the entirety of a portion of civilization. You're like you said, like nobody cares. Like you're not that important, like, and there's actually beauty in that. There's something in that should prevent you from becoming a Nazi or hating people arbitrarily. Because you should recognize.
No, absolutely.
You're as good as your merit, whether you have to work harder than someone else or not. You're as good as you do,
And I get it. I actually had a buddy here who was supposed to come and join us in this. He's a history major also. His name is James. He went to Binghamton. I've known this guy. We were on the fucking swim team since 8th grade, so I've known him the good portion of my life. And I actually wanted to hear his take on it, because he grew up in a wealthy family. I know he'd tell you like, that's bullshit, but I'm gonna tell you, like, you know what I mean. He grew up here on Long Island. He lived a good life. He went to he went to college. His dad paid for it. He didn't have to take out student loans. And he's had pretty much, I don't want to say everything handed to him. I don't want it to come off that way. But, the guy doesn't have to work.
He's had every opportunity. Yeah.
Right, he's had every opportunity. And, I feel like he lives the opposite. He's like one of those kids that grew up in those homes, and great homes, because his parents are great people. So he grew up in such a good home. I almost feel like sometimes he wants to rebel. It's not that he's playing the victim like we talked about. It's almost like, no, don't look at me like I've had everything handed to me. Look, he's like, I want to work for it. Like he grew up such a blue collar kid. And he's like, no. Don't give me anything. I want to work for it. Right. So that's why I wanted him here, because that's what I think it would be, especially in those middle states and wherever the fuck this is, especially in like a place like, I know they were all in Charlottesville. They talked about them being out of towners, but they're not coming from California. They're driving from one state over. You know what I mean? They're not coming from fucking Maine. They're a couple hundred miles away. So in those states, I thought it was okay to be a proud, hardworking American. And now for you to complain about what the fuck's going on in Texas or what's going on in Arizona, I really wonder, are we going backwards as a society from the everyone wants to be a victim? Like, is it like, no, we're oppressed? They're like, whoa, you're not oppressed, we're oppressed. Like, oh, you think that's bad? You see this? Like, is that really what spiraled out of control? Or
I think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that's accurate in some respect, but also I think that it's sort of a natural human inclination. That's sort of the path of least resistance, right? And I think that prior to social media, I think that that kind, and also prior to the hyper distribution of wealth in this country and the emergence of corporations, like we're all actually victims of a large number of things. So that's like a kind of a different discussion later. But like all of this is largely part of like a poorly. We're reacting poorly to the hyper concentration of wealth in this country. Largely is what's going on here. But the like as far as everyone being a victim, I think it's the path of least resistance. Like it's easy to feel that way, and before everyone who felt that way was able to voice it to everyone in the world simultaneously, that was sort of a fringe ideology. You know, I think it always existed. I think that there were always, like, you know, for lack of a better term, like broke-ass white people who were like, Mexicans taking my job, but like they weren't gonna go pick strawberries. You know, there were always frat boys laying around like, nobody will give me a chance. But that's like because like you can't get drunk every day. You know, like,
right.
That's always been a thing for everyone across the spectrum because we live in like a capitalist society and there's classes like. Across the spectrum, I think those thoughts always existed. I just think maybe they're more legitimized now because they're voiced on such a massive scale, if that makes any sense.
That actually makes perfect sense. And it's crazy. That's why this gray area episode, I was like, we have to do this because this really touches everything. I think this is why we're all fucked up, because we're all closing our ears to the other side. So...
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said at the beginning of the show, the other side doesn't include Nazis. Like, yeah, they're
fucking
on the far end of the spectrum who don't get to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called when you have a Venn diagram, but they're the one that's like way off at the bottom of the page, like that little.
Yeah, they're not in the purple part.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I don't know what the fuck they are. So we have to feel the need to keep reiterating that for the listeners.
Yeah. But you can have hope, too, though, that a return to, because you're never going to change their mind, but a return to laughing at those people may be in order. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm going to tell you.
Dependent on. Yeah.
I actually don't, and I try to be optimistic about everything. This is the first time I don't feel that. Like, I really don't feel like there's hope. I don't want to, this may be.
Not an unhealthy reaction. I don't want to sound like I don't agree with that.
Okay, just making, because I'm like, look, man, I don't know. Like, I don't want to sit here and lie to you.
On your podcast, I was trying to be a little more positive.
Hey, listen, no, we just want the truth on this side. We just want your actual feelings over here.
I definitely, I don't disagree with that. If someone sees what's going on and feels that way, I don't disagree with it. I would just try my best to offer perspective.
And I said it yesterday. I was going live on Twitter and I was talking about how racism is supposed to be fun in 2017. At this point, out of all we've been through as a country, and let me just quick sidebar. For those of you Nazi people that I see you on Twitter and like go back to Africa, I'm sorry, but like my family's been here since the Revolutionary War, and your grandpa, the guy's grandpa was like the guy had Irish heritage. So I'm like, I don't know. I think I may have been here before you. Like just saying, just throwing that out there.
Well, going back to Africa in any respect from any perspective.
Right, we're all going back there. Exactly, that's what I was going to say. And then if you go past before Ireland, see where we all come from. But I just had to quick sidebar with that.
It's absurd in almost any space-time continuum to tell a black person in America to go back to Africa. That's such a broad, absurd statement.
Yeah, like what is this? What is this? The 90s?
We all have to go back there. You go far enough back, but even now.
I feel like I felt like, bro, you have the internet. Like you could have bought better at me. Like don't even waste my time. But I just had to touch on that because people are fucking stupid now. I don't have hope for the world, so I have to state the obvious. Anywho,
if there's any way though, because I'm a guy who I feel like if anything studying history destroyed my faith in humanity because I've seen historically human beings like I've seen no evidence in history of a benevolent people of any kind in any way. At almost any time in history, if you give one group of people the upper hand over another, or if you put enough people competing for the same resources, what those people are willing to do to each other for the flimsiest of reasons is abhorrent and terrifying.
The classic Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some odd base things about humans, even post civilization, that are really, really terrifying. You know, like they are.
No, we'll get into that. I want to go there, trust me. But I was saying on Twitter that racism in America is supposed to be fun. Like when I have my Korean friends, actually the one Korean I know can actually drive, so I won't use him. But my friend, my buddy that's Chinese, if he goes to be like, oh guys, you want to go somewhere? I mean, I haven't seen him in years, but I'm just going back to an example. When he's like, hey, you guys want to go somewhere? I'll drive. We all look at him and we laugh because it's funny. You know what I mean? Or when my Irish friend is like, yo, I was so fucked up last night, and we all look at him like, obviously. Like, that's when it's supposed to be fun. You know what I mean? Like, I was exaggerating calling it racism, but that's where we're supposed to be with it these days. Not like,
I absolutely agree.
How could you say that? You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, so I used to feel that, like, oh, come on. Like, really, we're going there? But now, where we are, you're better off just not saying it. Like, you're better off not making that joke. So,
but I think that's a result of people living in the I need to be a victim echo chamber, and it's sad. I don't know that we've gained anything from that.
Right. That's why I wanted a history major on here, because it's just reassurance that, wait, like, we are repeating the same cycle, right? Like, I just turned 29 on Saturday. So I'm like, hold on, guys. Like, I'm not old, and I've actually, this is the second go around of this. Like, you guys don't remember this from the last time? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I wish I had more money, because I see how the guy saw The Big Short coming when he's like, wait a minute, we've been down this road before. I feel that with society, like, we've been down this road before, and, you know, that's why I knew Trump. I'm like, Trump's not our champion. Like, I was like, whoa, what are you guys so happy about? No, he's not the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
well, and Trump as an event, like as an entity. I mean, it's surprising, even if you look at his base, because these are like the people, like Republicans that came up under Reagan and stuff, and like,
right.
They were taken by a New York real estate lifetime Democrat swindler who just said a bunch of racist stuff in the primaries, and they got super excited. And then they got taken for a ride to the polls, and now they have a terrible president. Like, I don't want to equate the I don't want to equate the division we see on social media and in the news media as. I don't necessarily agree that it's an actual representation of an increasing divide among day-to-day Americans. And by what I mean by that is I offer people the exercise of, like, go to the grocery store, right? Like, go to the gas station. The people you see walking down the street will likely be a rainbow of different kinds of people, right? And
100%.
You don't, like, right, and you don't start, like, punching each other. Like, I don't see a black guy and a white guy in line at the grocery store arguing with each other so fervently as they would online about some largely insignificant matter or some sort of, like, blown out of proportion event. Or, you know, something as simple as, like, a joke someone told starts, like, a torrent of these asinine, uneducated, like, insult matches that you don't see in real life.
You're 100% right.
If you're looking at social media and looking at the news, like, there are pockets of people who are banging heads over these things, but largely, I promise you, people are getting up and going to work every day. You know,
110%.
Picking up their kids. So if there's any hope I can offer, it is that, because I do think it is easy to get swept up, and it's not a thing. It's not going on, but just day to day, we may not live in the world that we're being told we live in, where this Charlottesville thing like wasn't two groups battling over the yoke of power for the nation. You know, that wasn't a demonstration in Egypt where like government forces were coming in and gunning people down. You know, it was a
Right. And you know what's crazy about that? I agree with you, but I do feel like it's a step in that direction. Like, that's why...
No, it's scary. It's scary.
Right. Like, when you were just saying, like, a black guy and a white guy not arguing in the grocery store, I was thinking you're absolutely right. And that's why the Charlotte thing was like, oh, shit, this is coming. This isn't This isn't an ordinary protest. You know, like, that's not the first...
properly racially charged violence, despite the fact that on the side of the counter-protesters, there were all kinds of people, but it was definitely like racially charged ideological violence.
Right, especially when a guy drove a fucking Dodge Challenger into a group of people in another car. Like, once we're to that point, that's when I'm saying like, this is a start.
And how do you get someone who's in a late model Dodge who's that angry about the statue of Robert E. Lee? Do you understand? Do you see like the irony kind of in that?
Wow, that's crazy. Like, I didn't even think about that.
That's like trust. No, it was the first thing I thought when I saw the video. The first thing I thought was like, this is prosperity bordering on boredom. You know, like what realistically what was going on in Charlottesville, like the act of taking that statue down was a wonderful opportunity for like deep reflection on American history and a good conversation about it and like discussing what that means and why that monument should come down, turned into like a bunch of people with regular ass jobs out in the street punching each other.
Which is crazy. At
the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like none of those people went back to like a doomsday bunker and then went and overthrew the government. You know? No,
you're absolutely right, and that's what gets me about it.
The grocery store the day before that, and then look what happened.
And they're working at fucking Top Dog. You know what I mean? Like that's exactly what I was saying. But while we're on the subject, do you feel like the Confederate statues should come down?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. That may not even be like necessarily from like a historical perspective. Just as a northerner who lives in the South, it is an odd cult of personality where I'm like, this is like, you know, they lost and their cause was horribly unjust. Like, what is the fact? Like, it is an interesting part of American history that side of it isn't necessarily due like reverence.
So the Confederates and the people of the South invented the participation trophy with these statues.
I've heard him described in similar ways to that. But I do think that the history of the Civil War is incredibly important, and even
of course,
Robert E. Lee specifically, had Virginia not seceded, would have commanded the Union armies, and arguably the war would have been over way sooner because he was definitely a superior military mind to Ulysses Grant. You know,
the scary thing about it to me, and we'll get back to the statues. I mean the monuments. If that didn't happen, the way this country is we would still have slavery. Like we'd be like North Korea. We'd be like the last ones holding on. Like we're gonna do what the fuck we want to do. You guys could fend for yourselves out there. But like that's what made this country great. Like that's what made us different at the time. When and I grant, like you said, well, we're gonna get rid of George Washington. Are we gonna get rid of Thomas Jefferson statue? That's another debate for another day. But I feel like, or we can get into that actually. But I'm like, hold on, man. That's different. You can't equate. And I'm not saying it's right, obviously.
Logically, those two things are very different. Like,
yeah, totally. Like you can't. That's not even the same ballpark.
It's sort of the problem with that. Like those monuments kind of represent to me sort of the problem with how most people view history. Is they view they view historical figures like, you know, if you look at Abraham Lincoln and you go, at the beginning of the war, he said, you know, America's a white man's country or whatever. Like he made these, all these comments like, if I could end the war without freeing a single slave, I would, right? Well, people use that as like an example of being like, oh, the Civil War wasn't about slavery, except for it was like the bedrock principle of the war.
Right.
Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States, and he didn't want to preside over a civil war.
Right, of course.
Like the founding fathers punted that down the road to him. Thomas Jefferson, it was either Thomas Jefferson or John Adams said,
in like 1805 or some shit, right?
Slavery will be the rock upon which the Union is broken. Like, and then he died. It was like, yeah,
right, like I think they pushed it. Didn't they push it back? They pushed it back like 50 years or some shit like that, right?
Yeah, they just punted the entire problem down the road. Like they had it,
right,
and they just pushed it off. They were like, let them off it, but they knew that eventually there would be this divide, but they didn't realize it would be like industrialization versus agriculture versus like political interests and like
right.
massively expanding.
And that's another history lesson, so we don't even have to go there.
Yeah, but all of those factors don't equate to the fact that the Civil War was about ending slavery. There's the cornerstone speech by, I believe his name is Andrew Johnson. He was the vice president of the Confederacy. He gave a speech called the Cornerstone Speech, in which he said, like, the Confederacy is built on the bedrock principle that the white man is superior to the Negro. I mean, that's like, it's like a huge, it was like
that's crazy
history that says the Civil War was about something other than slavery is absolutely incorrect.
That's fucking crazy.
Like you said, in many ways, like, however, we lost almost 1 million Americans fighting that war, and like that was what it was supposed to be, and then it was, totally mishandled after that. Like freedom was qualified again for another 100 some odd years.
Is it that America loves the bad guys? Not the bad guy. Or, yeah, I guess the bad guy or like the underdog. Is that why they're still holding on? Because it's fucked up. And I get it.
As a country, we celebrate what people, the English considered George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and those guys, they considered them to be traitors, like they considered them to be rebels. So it's like, you have the second round where you're like, we're the rebels to the rebels. Like, we're extra America.
Right. And that's what that's also what I was wondering, and that's why I wanted 2 history majors here. How do they teach American history, like, in Europe?
Actually, as far as I understand it, the American Revolution is taught actually as the Franco-American War for Independence, because the French were so utterly decisive in our victory over the English. And I mean, you think about it, like America defeated the world's greatest navy single-handedly and defeated the largest land army since Napoleon single-handedly. Like, probably not, right? Because the French were like incredibly instrumental in people and guns and ships and blockades and all that. So it is taught slightly differently in that the French get credit for what they did.
All right, that makes sense. Because I was just wondering, like, what, like, you can't, it's obviously different, like I was just saying with Trump. But back to the Confederate statues. I feel like you can't obviously take down George Washington. You can't take down the fucking Washington Monument. That's what... I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe someone can make a case for it, but I don't feel like we have to go that far, personally.
It's certainly not as high up the list as can you take down Confederate statues.
Right, exactly. Like,
in order of priority of, recognizing history.
Sure, exactly. So, like, with the Confederate monuments, I do feel like, actually... this is part of the fucking problem. These need to go. I'm not saying destroy them. I'm not saying melt them down and make, I don't know, a fucking playground out of it.
You could put them in a Confederate War Museum where they could be discussed appropriately.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If they were in a war museum, a museum, and you can name it whatever, name it the fucking Robert E. Lee Museum. Go for it. Knock yourself out. Yep. But if that's going to be your space, and that's where you guys operate, fine. Do that. But as far as spread across the fucking country... I think that's a little crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like in town squares. No, I think every city in the South should have been forced to have an Abraham Lincoln statue in it.
sure, exactly. No,
Look at your conqueror every day. I go to Braves games when the Cubs are in town sometimes and yell, "We're going to finish what Sherman started." That's not really like a
I see how those crazy
germane to the conversation.
MLB fights start. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's just fucking. They have to go and they have to be in the museum, and that's why people are this way, and that's why people feel the need to go down the wrong, or feel like have the opportunity to go down the wrong path, because they take a look at the statue and interpret it totally fucking different if no one explains it to you the correct way. Like, you're not supposed to say, yeah, you know what? You're not supposed to look at Robert E. Lee and like, you know what? What about his cause? You're not supposed to do that. That's the point.
And largely, that's sort of a new thing anyway, because largely white supremacist groups are like anti-government groups because they feel like the government is like an arm of the Jewish conspiracy using black people as muscle to do whatever happens to those guys. I'm not really sure what happens to them that makes them that angry, but that was always the line for those guys.
Sure.
Was they were so anti-government and they were stocking up guns to fight the government, but now this idea that it's somehow melded with being a patriot is very strange.
That's why I think they have it all misunderstood. Like, even I saw a couple videos last night of some of the Nazi rallies. A couple kids in the khaki and white suit with the America Great Again hat. Like, a couple of dudes chased him into the middle of the street, and he threw off his hat. He took off his shirt. He's like, "I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi." And he was like, "Please, please, don't hurt me." And then he went to, like, a cameraman was just there. I don't know if a cameraman or just some asshole with an iPhone, but he was like, why are you wearing that? And the kid was like, "It's just something to do, you know." And I watched it, and I'm like, and you know what I'll do for the listeners? I'll put it in like the show notes, or I'll have it on my Twitter. I'll so you can see it while you're listening to this, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But when I saw it, I'm like, you know, bro, you're not even committed to the fucking cause. Like, see, this is the problem. As soon as I watched the video, I became even more pissed off about it. And I'm like, see, I've heard a former white supremacist speak. And he told me, like, he broke it down to, he was just a broken kid, and he was lost, and he was fucking confused, and he felt like the world owed him. And when he just got caught right place, right time, or wrong place, right time, hate
is easy.
Of course, exactly. Right.
How easy it would be to hate people.
Exactly. So when he realized that us getting together and hating doesn't equal love, that's when he realized, like, oh wait, actually, we're just in it to hate people. Like, this is fucked up. And obviously other shit happened in his life, but he stopped going.
It's presented under the guise of a place to find love, when really it's just a seething pool of hate. And that's a danger in a lot of ways, when people convene, you know? Like,
of course.
That's a thing that happens to humans, like outside of the, social constructs that leave us in our slightly unique situation, like across history, human beings, when they get together, it's very easy for them to equate loving each other with hating another group of people, you know?
Absolutely. I also wanted to point out that I always look at my numbers, the analytics, and I have 0 listeners in the middle of in the middle of the country. Like, after Colorado, forget about it. It's done until Chicago, going west east. And I was saying, I'm like, you know, that's actually crazy. I'm like, I don't know, maybe they're just turned off to the rest of the world. Because I'm like, how the fuck does that happen? Like, what is going on in there? Well,
I mean, you know, it's depending on your reach, though. I mean, I've noticed too, though, that traveling the country and being in smaller areas of the country pretty regularly for work, like, there's still always an NPR station. There's still always some reasonable people. A lot of them are, you know, tuned in as best they can to the culture because of the internet. But it's definitely hard to reach people who are in a hotbed of people who think pretty much the opposite way that you do. Or even the people who think similarly to you but aren't that passionate about it. I think probably generally people think everyone should be treated with respect. It's just the people who don't are usually really loud about it.
So let me ask you this: the NFL. Now, I told the story on Twitter yesterday, but I'll have to give you a little bit of a backstory. Oh no, actually, we've talked about sports. You get it. If people that haven't, if you never heard us talk of sports, just go back, listen to episode 8. So I don't even have to get into you. You fucking know how I feel about football. I am boycotting.
I was going to say, shameless plug. If you ever want to hear me talk about sports, tune in to the Sports of the Capital F podcast.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
48 featured the one Kingbo Christ. Don't forget to check us out all over the place.
No.
At Cap F Sports. All right,
Yeah, I'll definitely put that in the show notes for you. I'll fucking tweet it out like I do. They'll get it. So
no problems.
And just for the listener, I actually listen to the podcast. It's a good podcast, and you guys know me well enough to know I wouldn't just have some asshole on here that I didn't agree. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. I wouldn't just do that. I genuinely enjoy the podcast, so definitely go check that out. But back to what we were saying. What were we talking about? Shit, before we got into that.
You were going to mention the NFL.
Oh, right.
You were going to.
Right. I didn't write it down, and I was like, ah, shit. Like, but you know how I feel about sports. I'm boycotting the NFL this year, and I'm actually in a tough spot because I love fantasy football. We spoke about me being done after Peyton left. I don't have it in me for the Broncos anymore. So now that
I think ideologically or not, I think there's a lot of people who aren't as into the NFL as they were many years ago. I mean, even after
really?
the Kaepernick thing. Yeah, I think that the NFL outgrew itself. I mean, just to lead into what we're inevitably going to talk about here, the NFL sort of began gaining popularity at a ridiculous pace kind of in the early 2000s, and the fan and people's fandom of the NFL grew to make the NFL into like a massive, unstoppable, evil corporation, right? But that came too with the inevitable backlash of how they built that empire. That I think most of us who watched football before it was like a Disney-esque product, understood that of course these guys are getting brain damage. Of course these guys have anger issues. They literally were going out. Their job was to be rich and famous and try to hurt each other. Like they are modern day gladiators. NFL is not like Major League Baseball. It can't be held to the same standard as soccer. Like, the NFL is a whole other monster. What you ask those guys to do and the machinations of how they're paid and how quickly most of them go broke, like, it's all very sordid, But the product on the field was so dope that everyone was like, whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, of course.
Until people's moms started watching football and everyone invited their wife in to watch football, or they invited their neighbors over, and football became so utterly visible that any event within the sport became national news. And I'm not saying that's not rightly so, but that's why we're where we are. It's the NFL. They didn't give a shit about domestic violence until it started costing them money. They didn't give a shit about players like using massive amounts of steroids and drugs and painkillers. Even now, they don't really care about that. They didn't even care about brain damage when, like, any sensible person without the brain damage study would have understood that those guys were experiencing traumatic brain injury. We understood how our brain sat in our skull way before that alleged scandal came out. But it was, the NFL owed the world an explanation, but they didn't give a shit until it started costing them money. Of course they knew that. But they are a massive evil corporation. The
NFL is like, I I gotta tell you, if it wasn't for like SportsCenter, I wouldn't have known about a lot of things. So if the NFL, I would assume if they had to release a like a weekly newsletter to subscribers, a lot of that shit would have never been in there. And it was just it was just getting older that I realized how shady the NFL was. Like I'd say the past like 5 years.
More public figures, like there was less, like direct public figures. There were less publicists and managers. There were less ways to kill stories. But I mean, all of that had been going on. The NFL, guys in the NFL professional athletes didn't just now become early 20-year-old millionaires.
Oh yeah, right.
Like imagine like any organization that's like, organization is full of people from the age of 20 to 32 and they're all millionaires.
Wow, I never even thought about it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course. Like, I think LeBron James is an odd dude socially. I think I think he's kind of an odd dude, right? But I don't think it's because he's a prima donna. I think he's a kid who got, $40 million when he was 19, And in that respect, I think LeBron James has done incredibly well. He's like an incredibly interesting person because he didn't go completely off the rails.
I'm gonna fucking make a little note of that because I have to go back and listen to that segment. I have to send that to my buddy. Exactly what you just said. We just talked about this yesterday. Like he said the same exact thing. He was like, LeBron's kind of awkward. And I was like, it's crazy you say that. I'm like, you got to think about it this way. He was in the McDonald's All-Star game at fucking 16.
Yeah. I mean, some of these guys, especially NBA players, some of those guys, a lot of professional athletes were famous when they were kids. You look at it, like, think about people who you went to school with who were incredible athletes. Like, they really were, in large measure, kind of, handed their education, given a wide berth. Everyone around them was like, oh, you're the dude. Like, how at that formative of an age, like, and then going into your adulthood, you're given $1 million. Like, how do you not think you're the shit? Like, how do you not?
Oh, of course.
How do you not think the rules don't apply to you? And then if you're a football player, you have the double whammy of having been giving yourself brain damage unknowingly since you were in 8th grade.
True.
It's horrible, bro. It's fucking terrible. But I'm playing fantasy football because I'm like, either make it illegal or shut up.
No, true.
Either make the sport but it doesn't. I don't have the same fervor for it that I did. I don't blame anyone for being like, I don't watch football anymore.
And that's what I was just gonna. I was gonna wrap up the fucking point, and I was gonna say, football was a lot more popular, and I wasn't sure if it was just me or I'm growing. Because at the same token, we're all growing with technology. Whether you're 55 years old, or my grandmother's age use iPhones now. It's not far fetched for your grandma to have an iPhone. Like, my professor who's 70 has a fucking Apple Watch. So that's not, that's not like an anomaly anymore. So I think
not at all.
I have to also remember, like I said, that we're growing with technology, and I think it's just so much more shit to do now than to sit down from 1 p.m. on Sunday to 11:30.
To like 11, yeah, no doubt.
And then you got to go to sleep early because you're going to be up the following night on Monday till close to midnight. Now, that became taxing. Like I'm like, all right, there's way more shit to do right now.
Well, and I think they owe us a level of transparency and a quality of entertainment that justifies that level of commitment. And the more you learn about the NFL, the easier it is to be like, ugh. It's so gross. Like, it is gross. I still feel gross sometimes when I watch a football game and it's just like one beer commercial after another, and it's like, no, State Farm halftime show. They're like, oh, watch this dude die when he's 50 out here because he was only Doritos. Like, college football is disgusting in that regard too. It all is in some respect. Like, when you understand what's happening to those people out there playing the game.
And I've been playing football since I was 8 years old. I love the sport more than anything else.
It's fantastic.
But I actually, like I said, in the last 5 years, I really was looking at the NFL very different. And the only thing that kept me into the NFL seriously is fantasy football. That's the only thing that really keeps me going. Even before the Broncos won a Super Bowl, I really felt like, all right, like I've been sitting in front of this fucking TV for 16 hours at this point. Like, this is crazy. You know, I'd wake up on a Sunday morning.
But it would make fantasy football made it a little more social. You know,
right. That's what I'm saying. That's the only thing that helped me, that kept it going. So, I mean, I guess that gets to why the NFL is failing, because not like nothing has your attention anymore. You know, what really has your attention? Like a Netflix series. I mean, television isn't even the same. So you have a Netflix series. So I think it's taken the same hit as regular television, and like you said, they do have to perform to a certain standard to keep our attention. Like if I don't,
and playing football at the speed required to prevent head injury is A, impossible, and B, unwatchable. You know, like you either have the sport and you're very honest about it, or you don't have the sport. Is my opinion of it. So I definitely don't blame people for not watching.
That's a very good point. You're absolutely right, and true. That did definitely play a big part. I remember like the last couple of when Deshaun Jackson, I forget who hit him, fucking safety from the Falcons. And that was one of the hardest hits I've ever seen. Or when Reggie Bush, I think it was Brian Dawkins, caught Reggie Bush on like a swing pass coming out of the backfield. Like those hits. Yeah. It was like
a lot of people won't remember Johnny Knox was a wide receiver for the Bears, had a ton of promise. He was super quick, and in the last game of a losing season, he got hit incredibly hard and broke his back. Like he wasn't ever able to play football again, and he was like a super promising guy who's like starting to get some national shine, and it was just like, wow, you know, that was tough to watch. Those kinds of things are a reality check of how that sport operates.
True. Definitely true. So, I guess my what I was getting to earlier, my dilemma is: does fantasy football count towards the NFL? Because like if I really I got to run a poll or something, because I was talking to my friends and it's really mixed, and I'm like, look, man, if we're gonna do this boycott thing of the NFL, all right, I'm in. Done, because something's got to fucking change. Whatever, I'm in. If this is what it has to be, then so be it. Fuck the NFL. But I'm like, whoa, I can still do fantasy football, right? Like, and a couple of people, they're like, well, how are you gonna? You can't watch ESPN and know what's going on. And I'm like, well, if I can't do that, then like ESPN counts. And I'm like, I thought we just couldn't tune in on Sundays.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think probably a boycott means like an utter avoidance of legitimizing the NFL. That's how I would see it. Like you know, like if I was boycotting, like you know, if I was boycotting Walmart, I wouldn't want somebody like bringing me stuff from Walmart.
Oh shit, you're right. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
That's my take on it. Like if you're
that makes sense though.
And I do feel like it's, you know, this is all rolling towards the Kaepernick bridge. So with no further ado, I think I am appalled in some respects by some of the obtuse comparisons I've seen to Colin Kaepernick and what happened in Charlottesville. I think that dilutes the overall validity or the like need for a somber look at what went on in Charlottesville, as opposed to like something that isn't all that shocking. Like we said, like the NFL is like a corporation, and I don't believe that the NFL itself gives a shit that Colin Kaepernick is black. I think it has to do with the fact that they have fans that care that he's black, and they've determined that level of negative publicity outweighs the need for him to play in the NFL. if that makes any sense at all. Like, I don't.
That was probably one of the best explanations I've ever heard. Because when you first started saying the point, I thought you were going to say it has nothing to do with these black, period. And I was going to be like, oh, good. Like, when you said that, I was like, oh, okay, something we disagree on. Good. This, you know what I mean? But then when you fully explained when I fully listened to what you were saying, you're 100% right. Roger Goodell doesn't give a fuck either way. But he'd probably rather him in the league to sell some more jerseys. But Roger Goodell
sat across from Ray Rice, and Ray Rice said, I knocked my girlfriend out. He said, okay, you're suspended for 2 games. And then a few weeks later, he kicked him out of the league.
When everyone found out. I feel like it's the same shit. You're 100% right. And you know what's crazy? I don't think there's a lot of black dudes that could talk to a white guy. And that would have went over as well. That would have went over well. I feel like you explained. I feel like
have a conversation with black dudes. Like I've been to that movie, but I mean, I really am trying to be as objective as I can.
No, and I'm not. This has been such a race episode. Not a race episode between us. Like we're obviously going to be good.
Yeah.
But
that's the elephant in the room.
Right. For the listeners, like if that wasn't the best explanation. Anybody, but that's also my problem with it. Like, and I agree with that. I don't feel like Roger Goodell is necessary. I know Roger Goodell is he's exactly what he is. He's a commissioner. At the end of it all, there's still a job and he goes home to his family. He may even say he hates his fucking job. We don't know. He could be depressed. He could be like, oh, I love this shit. I love doing it. Like, I don't go, you know what I mean? This could be the time of his life. We don't know his true feelings. The guy's very private. He's not out there. We have no idea.
Right.
But with all that being said,
it's important.
Right. I feel like he's still doing business, and that's what's also fucked up to me. I'm like, we're really, because of like,
is that where we're at?
Yeah, is that where we're at? We're trying to please the crowd instead of, and I feel like don't make a fucking example out of this guy. You're actually sending the wrong message, and it's the same shit. I don't want to go back into Trump. We're just gonna keep moving on with the point, but it's the same shit with Trump. Like, you know what? You're sending the wrong fucking message when you do things like that. Like you're catering to the wrong crowd at this point. Like what? You're trying to. I get you want to. You're losing the realistic people at this point. Like you're not being fucking realistic like anymore.
They're both taking more credit than they're due. They're like thinking like this is what got me here, but really what got Trump there was that Hillary was so awful.
Right,
and
exactly.
That's why Trump was president, and that's like
Right. So I don't even want to go down that fucking rabbit hole again.
I have to keep catering to these fringe wackos that elected me because no one else showed up.
Right. So to move on from talking about them and getting back into fucking politics and this getting depressing again. No, it's all good, but that's what I feel like Roger Goodell. That's why I'm pissed at Roger Goodell. And I'm like, look, man, we know what you did with Ray Rice. Like you just said, he explained everything that happened to you, and you gave him a 2-game suspension, which is 2 weeks. That's like no charges were pressed. He didn't go to jail. Like he was over it. It was done. And once everyone found out that, I understood. Like I'm like, you know what? Even though you're full of shit, Roger Goodell, I get it on that one. Like I'm like, I understand. But with this, I'm like, no. You cannot. This is a peaceful protest. Like, remember the Constitution?
Yeah.
Like as much as you disagree with it.
And I would point out too, though, that I can't remember his first name now, but the safety for the 49ers, Reed or whatever, not Ed Reed. They have a safety named Reed.
Yeah, right. I know you're talking about. I forget.
He took a knee with Kaepernick. He's still playing. Like here, like this is where the corporation thing comes in, right? Because Colin Kaepernick staged a protest, which I totally support his right to do that. The NFL and the corporation looked at it and they were like, this is becoming like a circus, and this guy's a backup quarterback. He wasn't Joe Montana at that point. I think it was easier for them to blackball him than to pick out one of their starters. And he ended up falling on the corporate cross for it. And I think Griff brought this up too, is that as far as the teams are concerned, their motives may not even be about selling jerseys or upsetting racist people. They may have the same concerns teams had about signing Tebow, and that was that player is now going to come with a massive built-in fan base. and your organization is going to become about your backup quarterback, and the first time your quarterback has a shitty week, there's going to be massive crowds of people chanting and writing letters and causing problems so that you'll start their hero, you know, when in reality one of them's Tim Tebow, the other one's Colin Kaepernick. They're not, you know, this isn't like they didn't bench an integral part of a team. They were blackballing a guy because he took a stance that is A, unpopular, and even if you don't care that it's unpopular, it's B, a distraction. You know what I mean?
Sure. With all that being said, I still disagree with their decision, but I do, like, I understand why they're doing it, and that's actually what I'm pissed at. Like, I get why you're doing this. Yeah. Like, that's why it annoys me. If I didn't understand, whatever, but this is fucking just ridiculous. So
that's a perfectly, even if you see it that way, I perfectly understand why you would boycott the NFL, because that's a fucked up way to do this.
Exactly. So I'm not confused about it. Like, I get exactly what you're doing. You're going full corporate mode. So, but
that's more just for the point of the discussion. I'm sure you understand that.
And let me tell you, if tomorrow, what's today, Thursday? If I wake up Friday morning, I get in, and that's also for you guys starting a podcast. Quick tip: what I just did, you probably shouldn't do. Never say the date. It just makes it weird when I hear this on Monday, and I'm like, fuck. Like,
and then I catch myself in a loop of being like, well, if it's the day you're listening to this, I recorded it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was just about to go down that road. That's why I said that.
Very distracting.
But anyway, so if I wake up fucking Monday morning, whatever Monday, and Kaepernick got signed to, I don't know, be the third quarterback in Texas, I would be like, all right, cool. I'm good with that. And then I'd be back with the NFL. Like, all right, we're square. You know what I mean? Just at the same token, while you keep him out to appeal to a base, if you put him back, if they gave him a bullshit job somewhere, even just for a year, to just make us happy, I'd be good with that. I'd be like, all right, at least you're playing fair. Like, at least...
Yeah, because you wouldn't at least expect that level of shallowness from the NFL. I agree.
Right, exactly. But that's why that's why I'm pissed, because I understand.
Expect that
exactly.
Much.
Exactly.
That's dope. That's a different... Yeah, I hadn't thought about the idea of boycotting under that about Kaepernick under those circumstances. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, that's how fucking into everything I like to get. But... So at the same token,
I would like to say too, though, I'm not just not boycotting the NFL because I host a sports podcast, but I invite you and anyone else to listen when I talk about the NFL during football season. It may be a welcome break from Sports Center and many other things.
Hey, definitely. And you know what's crazy?
A lot like how I'm talking right now, and I do it all season.
But that's good. I actually planned on listening to you guys' podcast for fantasy, fantasy football shit. Because I really, I don't know, like, I really try to get every bit of information I can. You always make pretty valid points. So I was like, all right, I know what I'm going to do. This is going to be great. But then, this shit happened. And I was like, all right, fuck it. All right, then, well, that'll be easy. But
and I'm sure we're nearing the end, and I do kind of want to qualify everything I've said too, though, and just these are discussion points, and I think that regardless of a person's opinion, it's important to discuss things in your head. It's important to consider ideas contrary to your first knee-jerk reaction. You know what I mean? So it's important.
I'm sorry, Graham. Are you saying think before you speak?
I know. These are rare waters we're treading in here.
Yeah, the audacity of this guy. Like, we're. I know. It's fucked up that you even have to say that, but it's true. You're 100% right, and you do actually have to bring it up. We're that far gone that you have to fucking really tell people it's fucked up. But I'm glad we discussed all the issues. I feel like it was one more thing. I'm really glad we got it. I'm really glad we were able to do this. I'm glad we finally got around to it. That was also like a therapy session. I feel better just getting it off my chest. Like, but
I know, it's cathartic. I feel good having said it and it was recorded, so I can stop having this conversation with myself on the way to work.
No, seriously, seriously, it's good to just get it out because I never really explained why I was protesting and the other side, my real feelings about the NFL. So it was awesome to just get it out there. I hope listeners let us know. Graham, just tell them they can reach you on Twitter or your Instagram.
All right, well, you can find me anywhere pretty much by typing in sports with a capital S. We're on Twitter at CapFSports, the hashtag CapFSports, CapFSports will pretty much take you to us. The podcast is on iTunes, Twitter, Stitcher, TuneIn, a bunch of places. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all that. Come check us out, though. Definitely, it's not just a podcast about sports. It's mostly just discussions about things.
Half the time, right?
Yeah, the horrors of reality. So I was glad I was able to come on here and have, be a little less goofy than I normally am when I do a podcast.
And you're always a friend of the show. Anytime. You could even just call in like, hey, I got an idea for your show. And I'll be like, all right, let's do it right now. But I also want to...
Same to you. You have a standing invitation. Man, get that Skype corrected so we can do a video podcast.
No, I know. I actually have I downloaded a screen recorder. So I'm ready for the Skype podcast because I'm technologically behind. I know you said you use a Windows. You have a PC.
PCs and Androids over here. With stuff.
I try to keep up with the trends. I try to keep up with the fucking with the trends, and I get this new shit, and I'm like, I don't know how to work any of this shit. But anyway, I'm not going to drag the listeners on with my problems. I just want to give a big thank you also to you for giving me the heads up to get in the Google Play Store. That was definitely a good call.
Of course, yeah, you got to be accessible, man. I think that's the name of the game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think starting August 25th, I'm going to be on every major digital platform. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Weezer. Obviously, I'm on... I try. Obviously, I'm on YouTube. You'll be able to Shazam me. I'm on Tidal. We're making big steps. So you guys can listen for free. But if you want to go ahead and give me some streams on other media, I'm cool with that. I appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys.
Help this man do this for a living.
So I could take our podcast network to big things. I'm also going to be out in California. I mentioned that to you. I wanted you guys to come out to the podcast movement, but the next one's actually in Philly.
That podcast thing in when is that? In September?
No, it's next week actually. The end of August.
So I would measure the odds at very low that me and Chris will make an appearance, but we'll shout you out while you're there on the Sports with Capital podcast. We really appreciate you affiliating yourself with a couple of goofballs in sports podcasts. I really enjoyed this.
Hey, listen, man, you got to link up with good people. And it was a pleasure talking to you. I'm leaving all this in, by the way. I'm not editing shit out. This is going straight up.
Absolutely.
But, Graham, my man, always a pleasure. And I'll see you on social media. I'm probably going to go live like right now after this because I feel like I have a lot to get. I'm in a good zone right now. I got a lot off my chest now. I feel good. But
I'm pretty sure me and Griff are about to do a Sports with a Capital F so they get off the phone here. So podcasting continues.
Yes, sir. Always does. But all right, man. Good talking to you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sir. I appreciate it. Love.
Later, bro. Listeners, whatever you're listening on, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go rate this. So if you're in the iTunes store, go ahead. If you feel like I deserve 1 star, go for it. But if you enjoy what you heard, go ahead and give that 5 stars. And if you're on anything else, like this and share it with somebody who you think needs to hear it.